Hello and welcome to the Annie Altman Show, the podcast, Season 5. Welcome to the first episode in the Community C series. Today, I am so grateful. I'm so excited. I get to be here for the third time on the podcast with Brynn, Kerin. Thank you so much I went through the first time you came on and the amount of times I said your last name incorrectly.
And Did you? I forget.
So many times. And it's not what's relevant here. It's the icebreaker. I care to say it how the person says their name is important to everything. So Thank you for coming on for a third time. And this feels like a very fitting see with some of the stuff we talked about in the first two episodes to kind of weave together some of those things with some new things and see where we podcast meander around community.
Yeah, cool. I'm stoked to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on again.
Third time. We are virtually recording this time, a little bit different from before, and here we are.
You're in Hawaii. I'm in LA.
I would love for you to share for people who have not heard the first two episodes with you yet, which I highly recommend if you are listening to bookmark and check those out. I'd love for you to share a little bit about you and the stuff that makes you feel your most you, makes you feel connected and excited to do.
That's cool. Yeah, my name is Brynn. I am what do I want to say? It's so interesting. I've done a lot of work recently around like identity, and it's interesting being like, who are you is such a interesting question when I've been trying to like kind of deconstruct a lot of the things that I've labeled myself as. But I guess just for simplicity's sake, I am a woman, a cisgendered heterosexual white woman living in LA. I taught yoga. I would love to continue teaching in the future. I'm actually going to be doing teacher training in November after I give birth, and really look forward to like practicing with community again. But in the pandemic, I've stopped teaching. I am a holistic health, wellness, and life coach, which is something that I started really doing mostly during the pandemic. I'd thought about doing it beforehand, but that's when my business started growing. And that's work that I fell into organically because of my own healing journey, which is very vast and layered and ongoing. And I am in recovery from drugs and alcohol, cigarettes, lots of other ways that it manifested for me substance wise with like food and people. I'm also healing from Lyme disease still, as well as some other co-infections. And I think that I will always consider myself an artist. That's something that I really pursued specifically for a while as a dancer and then as an actress. And I'm not pursuing it in those arenas, but I still feel like I kind of live my life through that lens, I suppose. And I have a partner. We're going to have a baby in July. And what really lights me up, the truth, um, recovery, all things recovery is really deeply important to me. I think that human beings who choose to recover are some of the bravest. Um, I am really interested in trauma and its affect and recovery from that. It's a big part of my story as well. Health and wellness, spirituality, consciousness, um, activism, art, languages. Yeah, I've been learning French during the pandemic. I speak Spanish fluently too, but I started learning French, and I just love languages and different cultures. Um, yeah, I think that that's my answer for today. And my dog, I love my dog. He's the fucking best. His name's Frank.
Okay, first of all, so cool to get to hear that, like to get to hear that in podcast format. And I had no idea about the languages, and I didn't know you were fluent in Spanish. And
I lived
how
in
you think
Spain for a
you're
while.
studying?
I
I don't.
know. I've
I
studied so many things. It's weird.
it's so cool. It's to ding the astrology bell. The Aquarian sun stereotypes are amazing. For you've studied all of the things. You're like, oh yeah, and I'm in this class, and I'm just like, I'm doing this too. And I could see how the "who are you" question is challenging generally, and I could see for you specifically, because you've worn so many hats and in so many different fields, and then even in the same field you've worn all of the hats of different things in that one too. That be like how you pick which one you're feeling more today, and which one like you're feeling more this year, and also with all of the context of things shifting so much in this last year and a half, and
Yeah.
being a big part of it too.
Yeah.
Definitely see you very much in like recovery, like badassery, recovery,
Mm.
spirituality, magical groundedness. Words definitely I feel and I see.
That feels true. That feels true. Thank you. I'll take that. Yeah. I think that that's whatever arena that is. I move around in that arena.
And the focus on truth, like you said, of like what lights you up, and what I
Mhm.
definitely see you as someone who has the bravery and the courage of recovery and healing and all of those things, to put truth at the center and to put truth first, even and especially when that truth is super uncomfortable and not necessarily something people want to deal with, or not the community norm to be truthful.
Mhm. Thank you. Hmm. Yeah, it is really important to me. Yeah. I loved that when it was called True Shit. I was like, yeah, man, true shit. I'm into that. I'll be on that podcast.
Yeah, it's still true shit in spirit.
Essence.
It
Totally.
it cannot be and be on iTunes. Your appreciation
Right.
is very felt and appreciated. Still is the quest for true shit, because the truth is elusive. We don't know, and also we do know that there's truths, and it feels really
Hmm.
related to recovery and healing. And
Hmm.
I wonder, like, how much do you see that sort of as a thread in these different communities that you've been a part of,
Hmm.
in all the different artistic communities you've been in, and in different movement
Hmm.
communities, and
Hmm.
coaching, recovering, all, like, so literally such a list of communities that
Hmm.
they probably all like go about truth in some way. Like, do you see that as a common thread among them?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, I have like so many thoughts firing just hearing you kind of say that. It's what comes up for me um is it makes me think about my the evolution of my relationship to truth. I think that I I used to have a kind of aggressive relationship with truth. Um, and well, actually, before I, developed my aggressive relationship with truth, I think that I did not actually have a relationship with truth. I don't know if you can see that, but that says truth on my wrist. And I got that on my 27th birthday. Um, because I was really, it was something that I wanted. I wanted um, an authentic relationship with my own self, my story, my my like mythos, uh, integrity and congruency. Like I longed for those things, and I was very far away from them for a very long time. And I think that, I grew up in a home where truth was not appreciated. And actually, to be more accurate, I was really fucking honest. I did have a really strong relationship with the truth when I was young. And it was kind of warped out of me by my environment. I had to really um, adapt to an untruthful environment, and I lost that relationship um, that I had intact as a child. And as I got older, it was something that I longed for, and I was seeking it. And I think when I first came to truth again, it was in kind of this aggressive way where I thought that it was okay for it was almost like weaponized. I don't know if that makes sense, but um it makes me think about, woo, bless you.
Sneeze for truth.
What?
Sneeze for truth.
Sneeze for truth. That'd be a good bumper sticker. I was in an acting community. I don't know if I've talked about this before. Have you heard me talk about this?
Not only in little bits if it's what I
Okay.
think it is, and I don't believe that you shared it on either of the podcasts before.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you're listening to me again and I've already talked about this because I don't remember, but I was in an acting community for many years here in LA, where uh, our artistic director and teacher, gosh, she weaponized truth, and it was something that I think that I was only available for because I wasn't intimate yet with what my truth was. And so she would kind of like thrust on us like, this is who you are, this is your truth, this is actually how you're feeling. And lo and behold, many years later, it turns out that it was a cult. And I'm actually in the process right now of being interviewed amongst many of the other members who left. A woman is doing a piece on it, and her as the narcissistic cult leader that she is. And that, so I guess that kind of is like, for people listening, a gauge for what I was available for. There are many people who would not be available for that, but I was, from where I came from and what I was really seeking. She posed this acting group as like, we were the truth seekers. We were the ones who were digging the deepest into like what it truly means to be human, and the most honest, and like the most fearless when it comes to truth. But actually it was really, really damaging and detrimental. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the truth from that experience. And I keep hitting this microphone. And what I learned, one of the things that I learned is like, no one else has the right to ever fucking say what another person's truth is. It is a personal experience. Yes, there are realities that are shared. But the truth is not meant to be weaponized. It's not meant to gaslight you. It's not meant to harm. And I think to have an authentic relationship with the truth, you have to have an authentic relationship with your own voice and like self-expression. And so after that, things softened. I learned to soften and realize that communication is vital when it comes to truth. And being in yoga communities and on the receiving end of coaching, and then on holding space for other people as a coach, the truth is, it's like, I almost like, I want to go like this as I'm talking about it. It's like this delicate, precious, vital thing that I think so many of us lose our relationship with along the way in life. And in spaces where a person is given any form of like leadership or mentorship to be able to hold space for other people as they embark or continue on their journey towards finding that precious sense of authenticity with ourself. That is not something to take lightly, and it is something that needs to be done with incredible care and respect, and with boundaries and trust, and holding that kind of space for other people that I've sponsored, that I've coached, that I've, guided. I've learned about that for myself, that is really the way that I also must relate to my own relationship and sense of truth, because it is something that I'm still, there's been a lot of progress, but I'm still finding my way with. And yeah, it's interesting, thinking about community and truth, and how harmful some communities that I've been in, where they've been adamant. She would yell at us, tell the truth, tell the truth. And it's so interesting. We lied, to be able to just get her to shut the fuck up and get off our backs. It was that crazy. I saw a woman faint because she was interrogating her for hours on her feet. Yeah, just like crazy stuff. And then I was on the receiving end of that, and how damaging it was. And then also, I've been on the receiving end in community and 12 step and yoga community with my mentors, with coaches, where I've had people regard my story and my mythos and my journey with such love and patience, and understanding, and how healing that is and important that is. Yeah.
I love this hand gesture of holding and cradling and offering. And
Mm-hmm.
I really feel this one. And
Mm-hmm.
paradoxically, I also, the word indestructible kept pinging in my mind too, where that part of truth that is indestructible and ever present and that
Yeah.
isn't going away and also can be so easily like blown away in the dust or covered up
Yeah.
or manipulated in that way too, of like what layers of fuckery of gaslighting to verbally abuse someone while acting like, no, I care about you saying the truth, so I'm gonna yell at you about truth. Like,
Yeah.
the to me the highest fuckery level of gaslighting things are like about gaslighting or truth, or the like, no, I have your best interest at heart, I really do.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's helpful to
Yeah.
hear about, and I appreciate you sharing openly about the range of different communities that you've been in, and also to that accountability of you're being open to things, which nature and nurture is also, we, all of us humans, look to play out different patterns and things we've seen before in
Mm-hmm.
our family, in our school,
Mm-hmm.
in our
Mm-hmm.
sports activities, like all of the different places
Mm-hmm.
we have. And I know in my experience, a lot of truth and unlearning and relearning has been seeing the the distinguishing and the learning to differentiate between the different kinds of communities, and where it feels like I loved what you said of your story being loved, and of someone who is hearing it without wanting to change it or tell you what is right or wrong. Or
Yeah.
that really was coming up a lot when you were sharing too, of how much like the love is patient, love is kind, truth is not, yes, truth can be loud and truth can be forceful, truth can feel intense. And what sort of truth is someone yelling at someone and not letting them sit down? What sort of truth
Yeah.
like is shaming someone? Whereas
Yeah.
not really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never, I mean, I really learned just it's it's never okay to treat another human being that way. Like, even, it makes me think about times with my father, who, um I have a very complex and ongoingly complex dynamic with. And when I was younger, you know if he was dishonest, I would yell. I would match him. I would, fight with you're wrong. And he was. And also, it's just how I interact with it now is so different, because I still really struggle with him, but I don't engage in that way. I don't need to defend my stance the way that I used to. I don't allow myself to be mistreated the way that I used to either, and um it makes me think, what you were saying, like nature versus nurture. We seek out kind of what is familiar, and I'm sure that that's part of the reason why I was available for what was happening in the acting cult. Um and also, like, I think that there's this brilliant aspect to the human being's desire for resolution and wholeness, that we seek out that which is unresolved in us because from the past, these past experiences. We seek another avatar, another iteration of that same dynamic or that same pattern, so that I believe this, so that we can actually come to resolution, learn what needed to be learned in order for us to evolve and heal. And I do think that that's the opportunity that's available in that thing that we do in the matrix as human beings, where we seek out and we're like, oh my God, you're my dad. Oh my God, you're my mom. Like, and why? And then coming to that consciousness in ourself that, oh, it's not about them. It's actually like this is for me. It's not to me, it's for me. And I believe that what happened in that acting cult helped me heal and move out of patterns that I wasn't able to before. And it sucks that, like, sometimes it takes that, sometimes it takes 5 years of abuse in an acting cult to be able to finally set boundaries with your father, but that's kind of what it looked like for me.
I appreciate you sharing about it so openly, and also so your willingness to seek the truth and to your commitment to it and to see the pattern of it, and also to take that ownership and accountability of this is for me is very one of many reasons it's very fun and grounding, even if about fucked up things, to get to connect with you and hear your perspective and hear your journey. And I was thinking and feeling about the spiral and the life, sort of like the Pema Chodron quote of nothing goes away until it teaches us what we need to know, and it keeps coming around until you have that, okay, this is for me, okay, what is this here, what is, and maybe too, for that hand gesture you did, what is this quiet gift in here that maybe I'm like getting all caught up in some 3-ring circus or some other thing or some story of whatever, to not accept and to not say, hold on, this is what's happening here, this is not, I'm not okay with this doesn't feel, I do know what it feels like for my truth to be held, and for me as a human and my essence to be loved and supported and respected, and also too that needing, like Jungian, needing the shadow to know, needing that contrast to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what that was like until I did. And I think that that's a big part of it too, that and it makes me think about, specifically community, that we learn. I don't know, maybe I should just speak for myself, because I don't know how, I think we probably all learn different ways, but I learn, and I think a lot of us learn through experience and relating to other people. And I didn't have a reference until I found it in safe communities of people that could hold space for me while I walked towards myself, and that reclamation. And and that's an unfortunate reality for many people, that love and respect is not familiar, and so it can feel bad and it can feel foreign and uncomfortable and confusing and wrong, actually. And it that's why there needs to be such a quality of patience and respect while someone, I mean, I wonder if this is okay that I say right now, but I feel like this comes up with you quite a lot, right? Like in sessions that we've had in the flower, right? Like um where there's suspicion of what can feel like intimacy and vulnerability and love unconditionally. It can feel like, what is the string that's attached to this that I don't see? How are they manipulating me? What do they want? What are they going to do? And you know and it takes time. It takes time for that to unwind, and it does take community. It really does. I mean, it makes me think about Bahia, that's my best friend. And she is really the first person where I I I learned trust with her. I didn't have that until, you know, I was 30. You know, we built that together. And um and then it took more. It took other, avatars of people, and me seeking out safe communities, and being willing to move through that vulnerability and discomfort as I shifted, away from what was familiar and towards what was safe and healing. And it still happens. It still totally happens, where I'm like, the fuck is going on? What's this person doing? What do they want from me? You know,
Which
um,
has its uses and its places to be protective, and also can totally be that old patterning and that old, like, let me look for the same
yeah,
pattern I've seen before to happen.
yeah, waiting
Yeah.
for the shoe to drop.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm really glad
totally.
you shared too about the stuff with, like, that you're the first person I've gotten to do coaching with, and
Mm,
also in the flower community, and also getting to take
mm-hmm,
yoga classes with you,
mm-hmm,
and one of many reasons it means a lot to get to have you on the podcast a third time, and particularly as opening up for this C, is how much you, for your word of avatar, you are one of those avatars for me of it being okay, of community being
mm-hmm,
safe and okay, and also being someone who has the space, like you said, and the openness for my own fumblings and figuring out, okay, well, is this my intuition or is this my trauma response, and what is my truth here, and how do I sit with it, and how do I, because of everyone's process too, like you shared, being individual to that person. And it's a goofy paradox again of, like, we're all doing the same thing, like we're all learning to trust and to love, and what it
mm-hmm,
feels like, and also it
mm-hmm,
feels totally different to each person, and how they describe it is totally
totally.
different, and their process of, do you fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or what combination of them,
Right.
and how does it come up when you're met with that. And this is making me think too of how much, like, the deep fear people have of being happy. And I really feel like, to project my experience and experiences I've heard from people, of happy phobia being a very real thing, and this
Wow,
discomfort.
I've never heard it called that. Happy phobia.
That one I've coined, or I'm sure lots of people have coined it, that humans are happy phobic, because I feel it in myself. I literally just 2 days ago had a silly number of good things happen in a day, and then
Mm-hmm,
yesterday I was actively more, like, down, sort of, and even some today where I was just like, that many good things can't happen in one day, like, this is, what is this? And you have seen
mm-hmm,
and witnessed and been a huge community support in me having so many of those moments of people doing the hand gesture again with truth and saying, and also with me sharing my truth and with it being okay. And one of my friends, she shares, who I've gotten to learn truth and safety and trust with, that no one gets to heal in a vacuum. And I feel like you really embody and practice and do that as well, and have have embraced that truth in a way that I admire. And I'm like, okay, here's Brynn practicing in the different communities. It's doable. It's okay. Go to the meeting, Annie. Go to the thing.
Thank you for saying that. I received that reflection, and I appreciate that. And I'm grateful that I, I'm grateful that I get to hold space for other people on their journeys, because, as people that didn't have that, we understand the vitality of that, how vital that is. There's a real there's honor in that, and I'm grateful for all of the ways that our paths have crossed in the different communities that we've been in with one another, and that you've felt safe enough to trust me, and with your story, your vulnerability, and also to want me to be on your podcast 3 times to just babble about whatever we end up talking about. I'm grateful. For you as well.
Sending you a hug through the screen. I'll sitting in the vulnerability of being on the receiving end. And thank you for that, and for coming on 3 times. And your patience. I love that I can go into all the things at whatever speed or whatever, like they feel connected somewhere, and you'll be like,
totally
talk this through, like, what's up? That's interesting, or like, that's a cool, like, what's really going on here? Okay. I am feeling a need to bring up the 100th monkey effect. And I'm feeling a need
You're so funny.
Explain it. And it feels so connected to this, and community, the impact, the effect that communities have, both in this very tangible, literal way, and also in this very ethereal, sort of
mystical.
So mystical. And there's even the stuff in between too, which, like, I love getting to nerd on all of it with you, of also this sort of psychological middle ground where it's like someone feels supported in a community space where they can go and share about their experience, and then that person applies to a job they wouldn't have applied for, they start some project, or they like something else because of having that. They're like, oh, I did this uncomfortable thing, so I can keep going. So you share, please, in your words, about the 100th monkey effect.
So definitely, if you tuned in for our first podcast, this showed up there. That was the first one, right? Okay. So which I think was about consciousness. Weren't we talking about consciousness? So the 100th monkey effect is a label for this phenomenon that has been studied. And basically, I don't know when this study was done. I don't know when exactly this happened. I don't have that information, but researchers realized that so there were monkeys living on this island, and they had sweet potatoes. That was the food that they were eating. And I think the researchers actually gave them a lot of the sweet potatoes. There was like a plethora of sweet potatoes. They were studying this with these monkeys with the sweet potatoes. And typically the monkeys just ate the sweet potato dirty. So it was covered in sand and dirt, and they had a process where they would like kind of like peel the skin off a little bit, or it was dirty, and that was the way that they ate their sweet potatoes. And then there was a monkey who decided to take his sweet potato to the water, which was literally right next to where all of the monkeys were eating their sweet potatoes covered in sand and dirt. And he rinsed his sweet potato off in the water, cleaned it, and then ate it that way. And it was an evolution. That was an evolution, right? And they found that other monkeys started to imitate this behavior. And the tipping point was at the 100th monkey. So not all of the monkeys decided to clean their sweet potatoes. There were some monkeys who were like, we choose not to evolve. Thank you very much. We like our sweet potatoes dirty and sandy. And I feel like we all, at least for me, I'm like, politically, my mind is like, and those people exist still. We have those monkeys in society. And but I digress. So at the 100th monkey, what they found was, and this is where it gets kind of mystical, is that monkeys that were not on that island started to wash their sweet potatoes. So they didn't see that behavior. They didn't see that evolution, but somehow in the collective consciousness, the zeitgeist of those monkeys, there was this knowingness that, oh, we can wash our sweet potatoes. And then it spread. More and more monkeys started washing their sweet potatoes. And so that's the 100th monkey effect.
It's so cool every time. And the timing that I just saw that video on Instagram about it, and it feels so related to this sea and also to consciousness that we talked about in the first one, and the connection overall of, like you said, the collective consciousness and how much our community impacts. And the same things we were talking about of the things I was sharing in the things we were both sharing of communities where we've intersected, where we're human monkeys, or a different type of animal that we're observing how other people are doing stuff and seeing, oh, well, that seems to work for them. What if I experiment with this? And then more and more people, more and more monkeys start to do it, and then it does shift something.
Yes, you're so right. It really does. It really does relate to community so much, and it's funny. I never thought about that actually before, but with what it makes me think about is modeling. In community, we get exposed to different ways of being that we did not have prior. For example, in 12-step community in AA, which I'm a member of, you get a sponsor, right? And you have this experience of someone communicating with you and guiding you in a way that is not modeled in a typical family. So the way that they share or the way that they communicate rather, is through sharing experience, strength, and hope. So we don't give advice. We don't tell people what to do. We don't tell other people their truth. We simply relate and share our experience to help other people find their way in recovery. And that, I mean, that for me, I was talking about this recently with my coach, actually. Um, I mean, I cannot put into words how much that changed my life. Having another human being communicate with me that way felt so good to be related to, and then to be given strength and hope, but not to be given advice, or told what to do. And that would never have been modeled for me had had I not come to that community. And it's interesting too, because it makes me think about the AA community in itself, because if you're in AA long enough, you learn about like the history and how it began. And like there was this one dude, and then two dudes, and then three dudes who started it, and then it grew, and it was kind of like the 100th monkey effect, where people like it became this way of relating one alcoholic to another was able to do something that doctors and scientists and medicine and weird therapy had never been able to do before. Yeah, it's totally the 100th monkey effect. And now, it is this widespread globally available community. But yeah, it really makes me think about modeling. Like I know I've had other mentors of mine say to me, particularly like if I was having trouble trusting in my partnership or stuff like that, because that tends to be areas that are still sticky for me, and to have them reflect, well, of course, Brynn, because you didn't have that modeled for you. You didn't see another person, make a mistake and then be accountable for it and then change behavior and rebuild trust. You didn't see repair, and we can't. I mean, it's interesting because with this 100th monkey effect, that's so hard to say, 100th monkey effect. It came a point where it wasn't modeled and it was still known. And I think that, there is that is something that happens. There is like a collective awakening after there are enough members of the population that have had it modeled for them, that they see it. And I don't know, this might be quite arrogant of me to say, and I don't know, maybe it is or not, but I've always felt like I've been one of the monkeys who's like figuring out how to wash my fucking sweet potato, who's like, something is wrong with the way that we are eating these sweet potatoes. And I don't have someone showing it to me. And I'm like, one of the 99 who's like, are we doing this? Is this,
Yeah. You're like one of the ones picking up like across the ocean on it happening, being like, this is maybe going to happen and I'm going to go do it. And, or you're one of the ones being like, ooh, I see that one doing it and I'm open-minded enough to go test it out and go see it and do it and
right.
and
Right.
see how it goes. And like, this is back
Right.
to that sort of the when uncomfortable things feel actually comfortable because they're more familiar. And so it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like the dirty potato because it feels better in my stomach because it's what it's used to, instead of like,
Yeah.
maybe I experiment with not and I'm actually open to see how I feel without it. And to go to the point of modeling, what's so interesting about what you said too with, I know there's so many things to go into with that, and particularly with the structure of AA has been a model for so many different communities and
Yeah.
different forms of healing, and a lot of it's like I'm thinking about how much of leadership and guidance is, like you said, I'm glad you brought up that word of modeling, and how you can't change anyone's behavior, you can show them your own choices. And that even goes on
Yes.
a level of like to an organizational level, that other organizations were like either directly of like Narcotics Anonymous or
Mm-hmm.
like all like Al-Anon, like all these other ones, and in totally separate types of communities and in other places that still take that same. And I loved how you phrased it too, and I hadn't heard that story of it being three dudes, three guys, three humans who were like, we've all been through this together. And so
Yeah.
what if, instead of us talking to our therapist or this kind of therapist or doctor or whatever, what if we
Mm-hmm.
say our stories to someone who has a similar story and also is ready to receive our story without being like, no, this part's wrong or needs to be in this way, or oh, let me
Yeah.
make up my story now, like whatever
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Bill and Bob. Bill and Bob. Those are the two dudes that's
No way.
yeah, I know.
That's funny name wise.
Yeah.
Like just
Bill
that.
Wilson and Dr. Bob. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You're so right. Um, and it makes me think too of another phrase that is like like there's no watermark for that. It's like the water. It's like have you heard this phrase, like water seeks its own level?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's true. Like water does. It seeks its own level, right? So people talk about this. It's like we seek out the community where there is a familiar vibration, right? Or hopefully where we want to go vibrationally, right? And where there's probably some people who have what we want and some people who maybe we could support a little bit, and then a lot of people who are at where we're at in the process of whatever it is. And then there's this notion that like there's not a watermark for that, and I've had this come up a lot, and it makes me think of a conversation I was having with a client recently. And it once we begin to really I'm going to use the phrase of Brene Brown's right now, brave the wilderness. And that to me means like living with intention of authenticity for our truth, right? Once we begin to do that, life really does become a series of like cliff jumps, because there's continually no watermark for us as we grow and expand and evolve. And because we leave that familiar, right? We're leaving the dirty potatoes and the sand, and it's like, okay, now we're cleaning our potatoes. And then the next evolution after that is, I mean, it's not the next, there are many steps in between, but then there's like humans cooking potatoes. And and it's a funny analogy, but it's accurate. That's a macrocosm for the microcosm of each of our experience, as you were saying, like it's different and unique for each of us. So as we all go out on our own individual journeys, of truth and authenticity, and our hero and heroine's journey, right? Like as each of us are on that, hopefully we make it onto that path, and maybe all of us are on it, even maybe we're on it no matter fucking what, I don't know. But yeah, that it is a continuous um journey of cliff jumping, of the water. There's no watermark for that because water seeks its own level. And then, okay, now I need to seek out, find people who can model the next thing for me and help me and guide me and show me and be examples of. That's really what it is, being an example of, seeing people who are an example of. um and it is totally related to this 100th monkey thing. And I think that this is one of the reasons why, I mean, what your friend said is true. Like, we can't heal in a vacuum. We need community. We need people.
Humans need humans, and it's that one has stuck with me. And she's actually the episode right before this one, which is
cool
to be Aquarian back to back in communication and community, and the patience with me and talking through it, and in my stuff, and in the bravery and the authenticity to share your stuff with it, and to go through all the mess of, like, we're all figuring it out as you go. I hadn't heard that second part ever about there's no watermark for that. And to your point of modeling and examples, then that makes all the more sense that we need it. Like, I love the cliff jumping metaphor too, of, okay, well, if this person who I know and trust just jumped off this cliff, then I can follow their lead and jump too, which then people, like, if your friend jumped off a bridge, you will, like, take this in that direction too much. And also, if your friend says, like, oh, this is, like, this is a safe spot for swimming, this is a cool place to go, then you're like, okay, they've modeled this, it's okay. Even if I don't know the water line, I know I can trust this person. And so now I can, like, scaffolding too, all of these buzzwords of modeling, teaching, learning.
Yeah.
Of it.
Yeah,
Again,
totally.
I get to mush on how much I get to do that with you, and how much I admire your not ever telling what to do, and also having it be a community circle of support, of, we're all here learning and growing together, and everyone is learning and teaching and has different things on their story and their we need all of the monkeys in the
we do
community, even those stubborn ones who are like, no, I want to eat sand,
do we need that?
Well, I would say, and then this is my arrogance probably, that nature will, like, we don't need to be the ones to make decisions about those, because that will sort out throughout nature, and that is how that is how that goes, which then is maybe my arrogance of, like, oh, those people are dumb and I'm gonna be selected out for. It's like, well, maybe try washing your potatoes if you're open.
That makes me think about something. That specific point that we just talked about, around, it's like, I want to call him he who must not be named, our past president, where, I feel like so many people's response when talking about him was like, oh, well, he's actually what we needed to wake up. He served a really vital purpose. That monkey that was so fucking adamant that we do not wash our potatoes, and gaslighting all of us washing our potatoes, and building walls with the monkeys who wash their potatoes and don't wash their potatoes, just like, and the fake news and all of it, that, yeah, that's the response that I heard the most about him, and why, and the purpose that he served. And I wondered, like, is that true or is it not true? I mean, I do know in myself that it's like what I was saying with that acting community. Like, it's unfortunate that I needed that experience, but I did. It served a purpose. And, maybe we really do need pain and we learn from that the most. But I don't, I'm not into that part anymore. I feel like I'm really stoked to um evolve beyond that necessity in my life, and I look forward to that for humans in general. I mean, it makes me think about what's happening right now, which is that Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all three charges of second degree, third degree murder and manslaughter of George Floyd. And then that very same day, this young woman, 16-year-old, remind me of her name, Micaiah.
I don't have her
Micaiah.
last name on the top of my head.
Yeah. I'm gonna look it up. But she was, shot by cops in the chest, and it
Micaiah
just makes me Micaiah Bryant.
Bryant.
Yeah, and I feel like evolutionarily, like the staunch, like conservative god, I'm making this so political, the staunch monkeys, the ones who are like, we stick to tradition, we do it the old way. I'm like, I think that we've seen enough, haven't we? Haven't we seen enough to evolve to the next level? And apparently not, because it's still happening. But admittedly, I mean, I know that I'm not even close to being alone in this feeling of like, I'm just fucking disappointed in us. I'm disappointed in us that this is how it is still. You know? I feel like um in terms of activism, this is an area where it's like, all right, like human rights and equality and justice and a fair system and of a fair wage and fair distribution of resources and a moral judicial system and a moral education system and a moral medical system and universal health care and all of these things. Like, we know that this is what is, like, this is what's up. This is those are the monk, that's like washing the potatoes, like, let's get on it. And it's really frustrating how many monkeys apparently we need to have the tipping point where these things change, where people aren't afraid that we're going to become a socialist communist state and have a dictator, and um America is going to go away. What America stands for is going to go away if we begin to uh have a higher quality of life, a better quality of life for the monkeys that live on this fucking island. you know I didn't expect to talk about that, but yeah, that's on my heart.
I appreciate you going into that too, and being so thorough and so many of the different inequities that both spiritually and scientifically we can point to ease of energy and evolution and quote natural, how
Yeah.
nature works is that things are distributed evenly, that things are sustainable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to keep the monkey metaphor going, that if you're the first monkey to wash your potato on that particular island, or you're in the first batch of monkeys to say, wait a minute, maybe my quality of life can be better, maybe I'll attempt this thing that maybe is a little uncomfortable or weird, I'll go do it and see what it's like, that
Yeah.
then you're waiting the longest for
You
all of
are.
the other monkeys to, and then all of the bigger shifts and all of the things to
Yeah.
change. And this is one of, which I wasn't expecting to talk about, this is cool, of one of the reasons that community is so, one of many reasons community is so valuable and important to me, is getting to convene and commune and check in with the other monkeys of, wait, why, like, we're washing our potatoes and this, well, this feels good to me, does this feel good to you, like, do you think they'll do this eventually, what do you like, getting
Yeah.
to check in about it and to talk about the experience of it changing, and also to talk about, it's this weird of other classic paradoxes where we can only control ourselves, we can only, like, again, of the modeling that all we can do is impact and change and have influence over our own behavior, and also in doing that we're impacting the communities that we're in and the other people around us. And so it's this weird letting go of control and surrendering to the whole community effect, while also, and I know this is one for me personally that gets really sticky, of how to be an individual and let myself be my full version of me, while also being a piece of the tapestry, and so not wanting to either totally control it or totally pull away or whatever it is, where it's like, well, we're all in this together, we're all here, like, I feel like the potatoes will all be washed, what do you think, let's see what happens. And it's like such a goofy sort
Mhm.
of it's like it's like we're watching the movie of our lives, and then we're watching the movie of humanity with other humans, being like, are you seeing this shit, like, what's happening here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I I like I like the point that you brought up about like being an individual inside of community. Um, you know, the thing that I tend to struggle with um in that regard is, I think because I keep coming back to this, but this is just it's my experience. So I think because in my family, I am for sure that monkey who's like, I'm washing my potato. Like, but more than that, I was like, I'm taking this rocket ship to whatever, this other place. And all of the other monkeys in my family are like, you're crazy. And also, it makes me think about like other massive steps in evolution. Like we used to think that the world was flat, right? Like literally everyone was like, yep, the world's flat. And then this one dude was like, nope, it's round. And they were like, burn everyone at the stake who thinks that the world is round because it is somehow doing something awful. That belief, that change is awful. And it is going to, you know, rot everyone's brains and it means something about God and whatever. That kind of like burn them at the stake response from the non-progressive monkeys is, I really fear that. I fear that because I experienced a lot of that, both subtly and overtly from inside my family and from outside my family. And that it's painful and scary to be villainized for doing what is the next right thing, for trusting your truth, your precious, gentle, authentic truth. And so with what you were speaking to, like being an individual inside of community, there's kind of this like homogeneousness where like the safe thing is for me to be like everyone else. That's what's safe. But that's also death and regression, and which is death, right? And so this is why this for me, and you and I have had some conversations about this specifically, like this is where I really struggle in community, is when I compare myself to someone else and fear that I am going to be not loved or accepted for who I am, for my authenticity, and where I can really regress is in I can kind of chameleonize myself to be like other people, and then I'm miserable, and I hate it, and I know that I'm abandoning myself. And this is something that I'm learning. I'm continuously learning, like how to stay me in the face of the community, in the face of others,
Totally.
And I think it's really important for all of us to do that, because like you said, we need all of the monkeys. Like, one monkey figures out like washing the sweet potato, and this other monkey, I don't know, smashes a coconut on the rock to get the meat or whatever, like we all have our own individual seeds that are planted, that if we water them, get to grow, and then we get to share them and give, share them with others. And if we don't, then we don't get them.
There's so much I want to go into with that. I don't even know where to begin. One of the family is our first community. The family we're born into, the people who raise us is our first.
Yeah.
It's our first model of community. And Freud said a lot of fuck shit. Freud also said a lot of really things that are really accurate, that come up of, like we talked about at the beginning of this, where we seek out that same pattern, that same thing, because that's what we know to be true. That's what we know exists. That's what feels safe because it's been there. And then the paradox, where the part of the 100th monkey effect too, where part of community is homogenizing, or seeing other people do it. Like you go to a dance party and people are dancing and you feel that buzz and you start dancing more. That there is some level of that, while also this paradox at the same time of like practicing yoga in a community is a helpful example of this, of you're on your own mat in your own body doing your own practice. And so you're like picking up on the vibes, the feeling, the being next to someone else who's moving, and also you're your own individual mover. And then to go back to families, that for those of us who come from upbringings where that wasn't encouraged, where that was squashed, where, like you said, being that monkey, being the black sheep, so many labels of the person who says, hey, let's talk about this, and has the overwhelming response of no, and you're a psycho for saying this, and there's something wrong with you for seeing things this way. That so much then is going into other places expecting that same thing to happen and feeling like, to again go to the part of, you know, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, you're, what is this string attached to, this person can't possibly actually care about my well-being, what is this? And
Yeah.
and having it modeled, and also too, like having the practice where like you go back through it several times, you come around to it a lot, where
Yeah.
which is funny saying this out loud, like you've seen me play out the same pattern in like 5 different environments where it's like, oh, Annie loves giving, and now someone's giving back, or it's vulnerable, she's gonna do the thing, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that thing probably a lot more times still, and
Yeah.
less intensely, and
Yes.
more compassion to it, and
Yes.
seeking out more models of people
Yes.
who are learning, you know, like you said too, I love the coconut analogy of like, okay, well, who are the monkey, like there's monkeys who are really good at this, so how do I learn from them? And these monkeys are doing this, so it is learnable, it is teachable, that it's there. And I also really appreciate you sharing in your willingness to be vulnerable about your thing in community, and your comparing, and I totally relate to that too, of like, how can I make myself palatable to this community? And so much of this stuff of fears of abandonment and fears of being without community, that then my experience then leads to a whole clusterfuck of all sorts of, which then again goes to, how do I trust my own inner truth of what feels like a loving, supportive community and what doesn't? And how do I also trust that I'm gonna mess up and I'm gonna correct and keep learning? And
I love that. I love that you brought that up, and thank you for reminding me of that. This is one of the ways that I know, like, I'm still needing to soften with myself. I can be really hard on myself, and like I should be beyond this. I should not still be reenacting this pattern. If, you know, your example, right? So if someone, you know, I'm giving and someone is, you know, then they start, oh, they're giving to me, and oh, she's going to do that thing, like that, I'm like, you know, I shouldn't need to do it more than once. I should already know the right thing to do, and I should be able to do it because I know that. And unfortunately, I think that voice is related to, it's connected to people in my past. You know, our artistic director, her name is Michelle from that acting cult. She, you know, she would say that, like, you can just change like that if you want. And it's so helpful for me to hear that, like, yeah, of course we're going to keep doing that same thing to a lesser degree, hopefully, you know, and it's going to take as many times as it takes, you know. That's such a gentler, kinder way of relating to our own evolution. And I need to be reminded of that, because I can be hard on myself and probably other people in that way too, because if I'm relating to myself that way, of course I'm relating to others that way. Although I think that I'm generally way more soft with other people than I am with myself. Yeah, so thank you. It's so true.
that's fun and funny to hear from you, and you're welcome. And my guess, because of you and because of humans, is that you're way harder on yourself than other people. And it's the fun and funny part is getting to hear that from you, when again, like I'm reflecting something that I get to see modeled from you and get to learn with you. And it's very affirming and regulating and soothing of like, oh yes, this is a circle, this is the community, and what we do of people getting to voice out loud and getting to hear that we're all assholes to ourselves on some level in our head more. more than people want to talk about, I feel like. And people are, and by no means is it like no one's talking about this. Plenty of people are talking about it. And also,
Sure.
as someone who is talking about and learning through vulnerability with that, it's a really vulnerable thing to share. And also it's because we can't quantify it, we can't really know it, that, and also probably because we're all doing it so like subconsciously, and also it's become so much of what the pattern is that it can be hard to even fully realize. Because you were saying that and I was that same thing, where I know if it, like, you would in no situation be like, Annie, you have this long-standing childhood trauma that you're working to resolve, all of these different things, and this one example came with a date that you went on, and it happened. So there you go. There was your one time to like re-pattern and learn it, and like now you better know. Like, you wouldn't ever say that to me, and I wouldn't say that to someone, and I totally do that to myself too, where I'm like, Annie, how could you've made the same thing 3 times now, like. And this is where stand-up can be a saving grace for me, where I'm like, all right, what's the bit? Like, what's the pattern? How can I have some distance from it? And how can I also laugh at, even laughing at that mean voice of like you said too, of like, it isn't mine. Like, who said this thing to me that that they were projecting from someone that projected it onto them, that now I'm being like, we must never wash the potatoes, or like, I must wash my potato every time now, and how could I ever not do. I love extended metaphors, and it's so helpful in community to say this stuff out loud. Like, I feel like there's so much healing and recovery and journaling, and and in meditation and solitude, and also again, one of many reasons that I so love and respect and admire, and I feel so loved and supported and respected and admired by you, is that you were like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to come on the podcast again, and let's do this thing. And what about this coaching, where you're like, hey, I see this desire and I see this, and let's do it. Let's actually take the action and the practice to voice it. And it can be something I'm sitting with, is being okay with that hand holding and that community support, where I'm like, no, I'm supposed to be able to do everything independently, where again, I'm like, bitch, please, you wouldn't say that to anyone else. Like, no, you're not. Like, no.
You're so right. You're so right. You're so right. I would never say that to someone else. Like, here was your one time and you failed and basically give up. Like, you suck. I would never. But that is, it made me think as you were talking that I think the reason now, I don't know originally, but now why, is like, I don't want to hurt myself anymore. So when I'm recreating or reliving or redoing a pattern that is harmful to me, it like, I'm bummed that I'm doing that. I used to not, I didn't see things through that lens before, of like wanting to not hurt Brynn. It was like, Brynn should just be perfect. And I'm also in recovery from perfectionism, and I think that has definitely shifted now, where like, I genuinely don't want to continue doing things that hurt myself. But the truth is that sometimes, here, I just have this example that's like, I'm like avoiding saying. So this came up recently with my coach because of stuff that's happening in my family right now, where, for simplicity's sake, the dynamic, the pattern, right, that I'm reliving, is that I have 2 family members who are very inconsistent, and amongst many other things. We'll just leave it at inconsistent. And there tends to be and has been throughout my life a pattern of like they will be loving and show up a little and seem like things are different, and maybe they've changed, maybe they're washing their potatoes now, maybe I'm hoping they're washing their potatoes, and then I become more vulnerable with them, or I get closer, I have hope, and I then there's this about face, and they are no longer loving and kind, but quite the opposite, and hurtful, and really hurtful. And then I withdraw, and I'm so disappointed, and I'm so confused, and they gaslight me and tell me that I'm the crazy one, and then I go through like trying not to buy it, and part of me believes it, and another part of me is like, no, Brynn, you know better, you know that you're not crazy, like you're not crazy, you're not, this is what's happening. And I take space, a lot of space, and then they reach back out, or something happens, and there's like a family event or something, and they seem like they've changed again, and they make an overture, and then I have hope again, and then they hurt me again. This is the pattern that like, as I'm saying everything that I was saying to you, I'm thinking about, and I'm aware this is very vulnerable what I'm sharing right now. I'm like, why am I sharing this? But whatever. And my coach said to me, of course you're going to hope. Of course you're going to hope that things are going to be different and that they're going to change. You want to have them in your life. You don't want to lose that community. You don't want to lose your family. And it's so interesting talking about this. I didn't even put these things together with like what's going on in my life right now, and talking about community and how it relates to family. I didn't make any of these connections before, but I'm really having to sit with estranging myself in a very real and radical way from two members of my family that I have not had much, like I've had very little relationship with for a very long time. But I've tried to keep them, I've had hope. And I've been really hard on myself about it. Like I should know better somehow, or, I don't know, I should something. But as I'm saying this out loud to you, I'm like, fuck, dude, this is like one of the hardest. It's so hard. This is one of the most painful experiences that I think a human being can probably have, is like having to genuinely choose yourself, or not just community, but your blood, your family. And yeah, I'm in that space in my life right now, and I don't have it figured out. I'm just kind of walking through this, braving this wilderness, trying to do the right thing and not having a watermark for it or a model for it, being out there by myself. Like, am I doing something horrible? It feels like, and as I'm also like on the verge of you know, we're building our own family now. Kyle and I, you know, we're going to be parents and, you know, raising our own little one. And, you know, we have our pup who's like for sure our child already. And, um, anyway, I feel like I'm rambling, but that's just, you know, really what made me think about. And I really needed to hear you say, like, of course it's going to take whatever it takes, what it takes. And like, to be kind. This is kind of what I was first talking about, that at first my relationship with truth was really aggressive, and there's a softening, and I'm learning, you know, I'm learning how to be softer. 'Cause it doesn't work to be like, be better, do better, you know, at least for me it doesn't.
No,
Yeah.
I don't see for any mammal or any study that has shown that is effective. Oh, you were not rambling at all, and I got very teary-eyed, so I was like, please keep going. Keep
I saw.
talking. You got me. My first podcast tears, I do believe, at least in that way. And so thank you again. And I'm so, oh my God, side note, you and Kyle, you're going to be a mom. You and Kyle are going to be parents, and that kid is going to be so loved and so supported to do whatever, all of the things. And I am beside myself that I get to meet this human. I know you, like, I just have gestures and weird noises and gestures, and I get to meet this human. What?
I know. I feel the same way. Like, I cannot wait to meet him. Aw, thank you, Annie.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably about the stuff with your relatives. And I feel like, again, this is something that a lot of people can relate to in different ways, and that is shifting on the whole community monkey scale of people talking about more openly, and also on each individual. It is no easy task to talk about openly, to talk about it all, and to talk about on a public, like to talk about publicly, like especially just something that is out there, and which to me is part of all the reason that it's important for people to have, again, that modeling that things can get complicated, things can get challenging, that there's people who talk to their families every day, and there's people who don't speak with them at all. I call my blood relatives, and I call my chosen family very specifically and very intentionally with,
I love that,
with language of it. And yeah, to it, well, okay, I also would like to share that not only does it make sense that, and of course it's going to happen as many times as it takes in the pattern, it's also a beautiful fucking thing. It is a gift, and it is truly beautiful to desire that growth for someone else, and to keep having the hope and the belief and the space that maybe they can change and that they can surprise you. And what got me so in the tears was you talking about that, choosing yourself, and especially when it is someone that you share blood with. And then there's all of the layers of self-gaslighting and questioning to say, but it's your mom, but it's your dad, but it's your brother, sister, but well, what about this thing? And how to really, to be okay with that, and to think on, or to model from the AA of, I have no advice for you, and all I can do is share my own experiences and offer strength and hope, and that's all we've got. And I know for my experience with estrangement, that one of the biggest challenges has been that it feels good, and feeling bad, that it feels good to hold boundaries, and that wanting to still go through some story of like, okay, well, you did steps A through Z, but what about double A? Did you try that one? Well, what if you did this form of family therapy, or this thing, or what if you wrote it out in this format, or this whatever? And by no means is this prescriptive for you or for anyone listening that estrangement is always the option. And also, in my experience, it was and it is. And I haven't spoken with my blood relatives in a year, and it has been one of the most challenging and one of I could go into all sorts of things that could have or would have happened. It has been one of the most necessary decisions that I have made, while also being so hard, because it's so, we need community, we need people, and also all of the different fears of then, well, what is that? It is all for me, and it's all me taking accountability. So what am I doing wrong? Am I not, how am I not worthy of showing up to these other communities? Or all of those sorts of questionings of, well, there must be something wrong with me, then let me take on the blame for this. And so, how could I not want to talk to these people, that going into some story of then what that means about me? And I can only imagine in your experience, and how, again, there's like these same flavors, and it's so individual with each dynamic. And then again, where when it's blood relatives, there's the desire for that change and growth, and then of course there's that desire for closeness. And that one has been and continues to be a really important reminder in my grieving of those relationships, that of course, who doesn't want to be close to their mom, their dad, their siblings? If you ask any person, they're going to say that's their preference. And sitting with that, while at the same time of sitting with, like you said so succinctly, of, okay, well, if this person, if this community, to podcast it back a little here, of, again, for my own vulnerability and for the, if that community is asking me to choose between myself and the community, that is one of the barometers, the templates, the flags that I look for, that I say, this feels no good, this doesn't feel supportive, this.
Fuck yeah, Annie, that is so clear and true.
Well, thank you for clarifying it so much with that first community example, where, because I can look at at no point in the communities I've interacted with you in, has there ever been a semblance of you asking me to choose between the two of us, or choose between the community and myself. And that is, to me, such a marker of safety, and of it being like, there are no real safe spaces, and also of it being truly a place where the community effect and growth can even happen, if I can actually show up there, if I know that other people can actually show up there and wash the potato or crack the coconut or whatever it is.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that is the real litmus test, like, if I'm being asked to choose between myself or the community, that is not safe. That should not, it should not be an ultimatum. If it cannot be both, then it's not safe for me to be a part of that community. And and thank you for what you shared too, and relating about your your journey with your relatives.
Thank you.
It is, I know that there are similar flavors, and also like each journey is individual. And I hear you about, like, it being hard, that it feels good, and gosh, just there's so many layers to this specific thing that not every human being experiences. But I agree with you that more people are being open now about this being a part of their experience. And also what you said about community, like, especially when I'll just speak for myself. When I have had to choose between myself and the community, and I have abandoned myself and chosen the community over myself and hurt myself to be able to still be a part of. And then, and just to like tangentially say, I believe this is why I'm so passionate about truth and healing and recovery, because for me, that is my hero and heroine's journey. That is my journey, is like from self-abandonment and confusion and gaslighting myself and abandoning myself to, putting one foot in front of the other for a long time. It doesn't happen overnight, to reclaim myself and my truth. And what you were saying about community, and when one has had to choose themselves or their community, and then they embark on that journey of self-reclamation, and they do distance themselves, they do estrange, or they do, really take, basically they're not in that community. We need, as you said, like chosen family. We need that. I need that. Imperatively, I need that. And also I think that it's harder for us to be in community, because we come with all of these ways that we were nurtured that make it really challenging to be in community. And so it's almost like just being in the community itself, just like arriving and being there and showing up is part of the purpose of community and healing. And it just, like, the word that keeps coming up for me is like courage. It takes so much courage because there's just so much contrary action involved in that process. Like, it's going back to what I said came up with my client about cliff jumping. It's just like, God, it takes so much courage to just constantly be like, well, I never experienced this before. I never had this modeled for me. Okay, I'm going to seek this out. Oh God, it feels so bad, even though it's love, because that's unfamiliar to me. Oh God, I'm going to jump off this cliff. And then, okay, now I don't have a watermark for that. I'm going to jump off this cliff. And it just, I have so much respect for all of us, and on this planet that are, walking each other home in this way,
Courage is such a good word for it, and I'm so glad you got that phrase, because we've had it on the other 2 podcast recordings of the we're all walking each other home, and we're jumping off the cliff home together, that having the courage to dive in, to be a part of this community network that we have no control over, to show up with our baggage and our triggers and our whatever thing. And again, to this gesture of yours of trusting that it's safe, that people aren't going to tell us we're crazy or we're ridiculous for that, or that we can share this messy, vulnerable part that maybe normally we act like isn't there, or that we're not allowed to talk about, or whatever it is. It's cool too, that paradox where it is like the cliff jump feeling is so real, and also this offering feeling where it's a small tender hand holding is so real at the same time.
Well, I feel like that's what we're jumping off the cliff for. Like, for this, like, I think of it as like a little baby bird, like this delicate, we have to protect it at all costs. aspect of ourself, like our truth, and to reclaim it, to like peel all the things off that have been covering it, to like, it's so it's like our treasure. And I feel like that's what the cliff jumping is for, like to peel off another layer that's covering it, to take a step closer to it. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And my head's going again to that paradox, and that so where walking each other home is a helpful anchor of that it's such an individual and personal and intimate and internal sort of a your essence, your truth, knowing yourself. And also
Yeah.
it's so we need reflections. We need to go experience the world as the mirror around us, and community and people who support. We are recording this podcast because you agreed to record it, and we're here both talking and needing outside reflection, needing to reflect together.
Yeah, it's not in a vacuum. We can't do it in a vacuum. Totally.
No, apparently I wouldn't want to, because then that's how it would be happening and it would not be as fun.
Yeah, I agree. It would not be as fun. But ask me on any particular day and I might tell you like, I would take it for a little bit.
I'll take some vacuum time now. Thank you. Just gonna pretend like the world doesn't exist for an hour. I'll see you.
Yeah. Cause it's, like I just shared, like it is challenging for me to be in community. I love it. I need it. And it's also challenging for me. And I know I'm not the only one, but I also know, I have people in my life that are, I see what I perceive to be like so much ease in community. And I'm envious, I'm like, gosh, I wish that it was just that effortless for me. And I don't know that people know that it's as hard for me as it is. We all are having these experiences internally and judging, comparing our insides to other people's outsides, and which is so helpful always. That's the way to do it.
I was thinking that when you shared that, I was like, I bet that there's people who will listen to this and be totally surprised and totally like, what do you mean Brynn does all of her yoga teaching experience and sponsor like Brynn Rocks community? What are you talking about? And I would guess too, for some of those people who you're looking at who like seem to have it figured out and like it's so easeful for them, that I bet if you ask some of them that they would say it's really challenging for them too.
Yeah,
or like
maybe
some moments. And I feel like a lot of times
for sure,
like the people who, and this is from another friend who was like essentially that sharing that often the things that we get so insecure about or we feel like we're not good at, other people actually see us as very good at them, because usually we put in more time and effort to compensate, because we're like, no, I'm not good at this. So like, because literally objectively on like a paper stand, like someone could list out like the resume of Brynn's community experiences, and like seriously, like as it written out, it's like, wow, this woman has been in different roles in so many different kinds of community, and that like, oh, she might like, this must be fun and easy for her, she's really practiced it. And
oh my god, no.
You're like, no, this is really challenging for me. Like,
yeah, but you're right. I mean, that's interesting. I've never heard that before, that oftentimes the things that we feel the most insecure about are that, are our weakness.
That was like a
other people
that
other people might perceive it as a strength, because we have to, there's an overcompensation or a lot of effort. And it's interesting actually hearing you say that, like if you look at my resume of community, if that were a thing,
you've done all
Yeah.
of this. You've done like literally every like you're like when you told me you were in acupuncture school, I was like, you've done all of the things.
I
It's
mean,
so
I
cool.
don't I don't know about all of the things, but
A
I've,
very impressive, extensive list of like you are someone who I'm like you have experience in I'm like
yeah.
nerding out about
Yeah.
it. Like you have been involved, even if you're like it's been challenging for you, you've done it, you've showed up,
Mm-hmm.
you've had the courage to go through AA, to be a sponsor, to teach yoga, to do massage, to act, to dance.
Yeah.
Like you've been
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. I think, yes, you're right. And I think um one of my qualities that I am most grateful for is my courage, because I am very scared a lot of the time, like very, of all kinds of things, people, community, the unknown, like tomorrow, so many things. But I tend to it's like I have this thing inside of me where I have enough courage to match it. And so I think it's really interesting hearing you say that, like, about all the things that I've shown up in, and the different roles that I continue to show up in. And um I see how so much of it has been being terrified and doing it anyway. Cliff jumping. I've done a lot of cliff jumping in my life. Um, and I continue to do a lot of cliff jumping. And I think I've done a lot of cliff jumping in community, actually. It's so interesting hearing that, it makes me think about when I did my teacher training, which is where I met Kyle, and working at the studio was where you and I met. And um I oh my god, Annie, I was so insecure. I was so insecure. I had It was hard for me, like, being in that community. It was really hard for me because I had actually been involved in another yoga community that where there was a lot of it wasn't traumatic, but like it wasn't a safe environment. And I also wasn't as skilled as I am now at communicating and taking care of myself. And I was very, like, kind of blown about in that community. And that's where I met Joe. And so we knew each other. Joe and I both met like right when we both moved to LA, which is so funny. And we knew, like, I knew him before Stacy. Like, we knew he knew Brynn before she was sober, you know, chain smoking cigarettes on my way to and from yoga, like trying to wear perfume to cover it up, like, just all of that. And when I did the teacher training with him, it I was so scared because I was ashamed of how I had who I was in the previous yoga community that I was in. I had a lot of beliefs about people's judgment of me because I judged myself. And and also because some people did outwardly judge me, and they like said things to me, and I kind of like, I just had all the shame and all of these beliefs. And when uh but I missed it. I missed it so much because yoga is so like, yoga is one of the first communities, one of the first practices that really was medicine for me. It was like it worked. Yoga works for me. And I longed for community, and hot yoga community specifically, because that's my fucking jam. And when Joe opened up that studio, or Urban, I started going, but I was so ashamed. I was like afraid of what they thought of me. And um but then when he said they were doing the teacher training, it was actually an amends to myself that I didn't know that I was making, because when I worked at the other yoga studio, which I'm not naming purposefully, but I I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't have the courage then to say that that's what I wanted to do. I was still acting, and I had all this judgment that I was like giving up on my dream, and also like I didn't feel like I was worth asking that for of my employees or my employers, and just all of this stuff. And so I I I decided to do his teacher training, but I didn't even know until I started doing it. It was an amends to myself. I I was just like unconscious as to why I was doing it, and was like, oh, I'll deepen my practice. And I couldn't even say then that I wanted to teach. Like, I was so, yeah, I couldn't say it out loud. And God, I had all of this stuff about Joe. I thought he hated me. I had all of like, and one day I had to, I came to him and I was like, I have to talk to you, because like I'm fucked up, and I think that you hate me. Like, I don't think you want me in this teacher training. I think that you judge me. Like, all of this stuff. I remember I was like, do you have a second? And I just like started sobbing. And it was the first time that I was really vulnerable and honest with him about all of this baggage that I carried. And he I think that he's probably okay with me sharing this. I think that he's probably okay with me sharing this. He was like, I remember he had like a koosh ball in his hand. I think it was a koosh ball. And he was like, you know, I think that on the other side of this conversation, like, he dropped the koosh ball and he was like, we get to completely let go of all of this. Cause he acknowledged to me that he had it too. That like he had stories about me because I knew a different version of him. And he was like, I actually didn't have that judgment of you at all, like about addiction and all that stuff. And he was like, I'm so excited that you are here. And also, like, I'm a good yoga teacher. And he was like, I'm like, I believe in you. And it was so healing. And it was the biggest cliff, and that, I think that, and it's interesting just how it worked out. Like, and then I started thriving in that teacher training. And like, I immediately, like literally after it finished, they offered me classes. And I became a big part of that community. And I really, like, I claimed my seat. I like took my spot, that I had felt so unworthy of prior. And and I met, you know, my partner and, you know, you and so many friends and teachers. And, you know, I loved, and now Joe and Stacy are like their chosen family. And it's so interesting just like thinking about that, what you were saying about, you know, me and my role in community, my roles in community. And it's true. I like, I have risen into like leadership roles in some communities, but it's been fucking terrifying every time. It's not, it's not, it's not my default. It's not easy for me. It's not comfortable. Um, but I've learned how to be honest about my fear, you know, and share it with other people when it's blocking me, um which is life-saving. Like it saved my life, you know. Learning to tell the truth when I'm scared has saved my life. I didn't expect to talk about that.
I'm really glad you did. And
Story.
I'm glad you shared the whole thing, and that last bit of it was such a beautifully phrased. And again, this gesture of trusting that there's someone you can share it to, and that story of you taking that to Joe and saying, hey, I have, for the Brene Brown again, of like, I have the story I'm telling myself is this, and the cliff jump of sharing it.
Yeah.
And not knowing how that person's going to respond to it or where it's going to go, and also knowing that not sharing it feels worse.
Yeah.
And then being able to look back and say, like, that's so amazing that was such a turning point of, in order to claim your seat, to sit at a spot, to be there, as part of it is you're showing, like, you showing up as your whole self is also showing up with that fear of, am I allowed to teach? Am I allowed to be here? Well, what about all of these stories of all of the reasons that I could tell myself for why I'm not?
Yeah.
And to have the courage to share it. I'm already thinking that for for episode 4, when you come on for the the 10th of the seas, we can circle back and see where things go there, if and when the situation and the timing arises, because it's so connected to community, and it's so inspiring, and it's so comforting to hear about your cliff jumping and the ways that to get to hear the other side of it. And then from the experience of like my meeting you and getting to see someone who I was like, she's been teaching yoga for years, this is so second nature to her, like, you still have to date some of the favorite pacing I've ever had. And like when I go through my own practice, or like you are a model you're a model for me of pacing, and how to have that set up. And so also then the model of that you're also human, that you're also like, well, which, like, yoga is a classic stereotype of like, am I allowed to guide people in breathing? Like, I don't feel worthy of this. And then the community aspects make so much more of like, this people saw me in this place, and what about this thing? And you're like, well, I'm scared and I'm still here.
Yeah. Thank you. I received that as well, about, you know, the pacing of my classes. And I love teaching yoga. I really do. It's something that I'm really glad that I had the courage to say that to him that day, and to, you know, get that shit out of the way so that I could be of service to other people in this way that I love being. And just talking about it so much, I'm just like, God, I miss it. I miss teaching so much.
I'm so excited for you to get back into it, as and where and however the ways it happens.
Me too. I'm really excited.
And it makes me
Um,
of the part of, if a community is asking you to choose between you and your, like, yourself in that community, then to me that
mhm.
in all of the things, it's also a disservice to that community. If you're not showing up as you, then where's the Brynn to teach yoga? Where's the Brynn that's
Right.
if you've abandoned
Right.
like that?
Right. I agree with you. And I think that there are lots of communities where unfortunately like they don't they don't want people to show up authentically. They don't. Um but yeah, it's interesting too as I just shared all of that, it made me realize like that's what creates trust, because that was a turning point not just for me like in that community but also with Joe, where I really got to see who he is and what he's available for, what level of truth and honesty is he available for. And he showed me like he's the real deal. He's really willing. And that was so healing for me to then feel safe. Like, oh, I can, you know, I think that was maybe my first relationship with an employer, right? Like he's my boss, where I'm like, I trust him and I can come to him and make requests and I can, you know, say that I feel weird or whatever it is, and know that he'll have my back. And he did, and he still does, he's, and that's awesome. It creates closeness when other people are available for it. And that has been so healing for me in community, that quality that I didn't get growing up. And I get to give myself those experiences in other spaces now.
Play out a new pattern and see it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it does. It
Mm-hmm.
says so much about a person, and it is so much of the safety and the trust of how that's acknowledged, that someone wasn't like, what, that's weird, your feelings are weird, that Joe is a magical human. And Joe, I can imagine, I can picture the, like, him setting something down or him being like, I'm here for this conversation and I'm going to be real
Yeah.
too, and here's my stories and my perceptions. And
Yeah.
that does, that shifts so much, just to have the response be someone saying, hey, I'm here to hear.
Yeah.
Like where we started, of
Totally.
someone being like, hey, I'm here with you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jumping off the cliff. This podcast
Jumping off
went
those
way
cliffs.
over in time in the
Did
best.
it? What time was it?
Oh, I'm so glad that I didn't schedule something after, and I was glad that you had the free time after
Mm-hmm.
that, because I could keep going, and I feel like my brain is
Yeah.
starting to go into mush
Yeah.
of focus. That
Yeah. I should probably eat something and pee.
the bladder and the stomach coming up. So
Yeah.
we will circle again. This was a lot of big cliff jumping in a podcast, in also a great way. I wasn't expecting to cry on a recording, and
Yeah.
ah,
We got vulnerable.
we did. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate, and shout out to Urban. I appreciate you
Yeah.
bringing up Joe and the studio and that community and that example and that cliff jumping that those humans did to encourage other people to go jump off their cliffs too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dive in, humans. And I really
Yes.
would love to have you on again for the courage
Courage. All
episode.
right, let's do it. Fuck it.
We got time. We got plenty of C's to happen in between.
I'll probably have a baby then.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the courage of being a mom,
Yeah.
a parent, and yeah. Oh my
And
gosh.
to give birth. Oh my God. Yes.
Hey,
Jesus. That's happening. It's going to happen.
We're gonna do it, body. I have only guesses.
We are.
You're gonna be such a badass and gentle mom at the same time. Like this gesture,
Thank you.
while also being the protective mother of like, if you cross this child doing this thing, I will cross you. And also gentle, like, okay, that's enough.
Thank you. I'll take that. Yeah. I aspire to be that way.
This was such a fun recording. I needed this. I could just keep going and keep reiterating in so many ways of how much I get to learn from you and with you and getting to practice, and thank you so much for believing in this podcast and in me and in sharing. And I don't have words, and this is another Brynnism you shared where you were talking about Bahia and you were like, Annie, if I attempted to like write a list of all of the things, like I couldn't pay her back for the things. And that is another marker, reminder, template of, oh yeah, there are people who you can't measure the thing, and that's a good thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love
you. I love you too. So much. Thank you for having me again, and I can say all of that back to you. I'm truly grateful for you and love you, and I'm inspired by you, and I'm just excited for what's to come. It continues to evolve, and yeah.
I'm like happy dancing and vulnerability smush, so thank you. And I will put all your stuff in the description box here if people want to contact you. I don't know if you're taking people for coaching or what you're.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a maternity leave, but I am available to connect with people about when I'm available. So yeah, so if people reaching out is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll put all the information where you can find Brynn in the description here. I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you for letting me be such a smush. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in, and thanks for being you. Thank you, Brynn.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Annie.